Okay, guys, so today in our lesson 6, we're talking about managing parts in MaxxTraxx and also the online parts ordering we touched on briefly last week. We're going to talk a little bit more about how we do setups in that today. So since everybody on the call is going to be a full accounting user, a couple of things that I just wanted to reiterate. Remember, in a repair order, we touched on this last week. Let me go ahead and open one up. If we have a red circle and a slash over this part, it can mean one of two things. And again, I'm re-emphasizing this because we're full accounting users on this webinar today. It can mean either my stock on hand, you guys see this in the lower left corner? Either it means I don't have one in stock in order to sell to this customer, or it could mean if I click on this profit monitor button, it means I don't have a cost. Now, of course, since it says a 60% profit margin, we would have to have a cost, or else it'd say 100% profit margin. And why is that important? Because when we post and pay this RO, in the background, MaxxTraxx grabs that $2.67, and it moves it from the inventory valuation, a little accounting speak here, the 13,000 inventory evaluation asset account, and it moves it automatically in the background to cost of goods. Okay, so that is really, really an important reason why we want to make sure that you guys always have a cost in here, and we also want to make sure your quantity is correct. Now, since you guys are also previous MaxxTraxx users, in MaxxTraxx we used to have a little check mark, a short sale in MaxxTraxx, where when we got around to finally entering that restock parts ticket, we would actually have to say, well, put this part to cost of goods sold instead of inventory, right? Well, MaxxTraxx will do that for you automatically, even if you close out this RO, and this is negative, and you restock the parts ticket later on, it will bring it up from a -1 to a 0, which is what it should do. And it already is moving costs over to cost of goods sold. So it does take care of itself. We don't have to do as much work as we had to do in MaxxTraxx. But I'll tell you right now, guys, number one rule is don't close out an RO with this red circle and slash through it. Okay, so I just want to touch on that briefly before we go into talking about the part record itself and the multiple ways that we get those parts in the MaxxTraxx. Any questions on that before I move into the part record?
How about, is this a good time to ask you about placeholders, or?
You know what, let me write that down, Randy, and we'll talk about that in a moment, because yes, I'm a huge kit person, and I've used placeholders in the kit. So I'll note that down. Let me jump to this one part in a moment, and then yes, we'll talk about that. But getting back to saying all accounting users on the call, of course, you would never want to close out an RO with placeholder. And we do have something in setups under our repair orders and parts invoice section in inventory setups that says require placeholders to be replaced on an RO. Okay, actually, while we're also looking at this screen, we have it selected that we're going to track inventory in our parts in MaxxTraxx in our parts department. And I know, guys, you know, 80–90% of what you guys sell, you don't actually stock as inventory, but we still track every single part purchase. We add all of our catalog parts, anything we buy online parts ordering, we add to our inventory list, which also says, you know, we need to have a quantity in stock. It can't be -1. We say here to add buyouts to inventory list because by checking this box, it turns the buyout feature into a quick part. And all that means, we're going to talk about that briefly. I'll make a note here, Randy. Let's talk about buyouts. We actually have something in our system in MaxxTraxx called buyout, and it's for shops that don't use the full accounting. And we have an option to actually, if you think you're never going to buy this part again, you can just say, you know what, I'm just going to put it on this one RO. Don't add it to my parts list. Don't track where I bought it from. Don't track how much I paid for it in my parts list. I don't care. But I'm going back to, if we're full accounting users, we actually do want to track every part purchase we ever make by adding every part that walks in our front door to our parts list. And, you know, I have actually seen a shop in California, 300,000 parts on their parts list. Of course, they've been using our software in one form or another for 20 years. But whether or not you have 200, 2,000, or 200,000 parts on your parts list, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't affect the, you know, how fast the system works. So I go back to, if you're a full accounting user, we want every part that you purchase to be added to the parts list. And we're going to talk about this buyout here in just a few minutes. Any other questions, Randy, before I jump into the part record?
No.
Okay, and just bear with me, and this stuff may pan itself out, and then if you have questions as you go along, let me know, and we will address it towards the end of the webinar. So let's go back into kind of our basic part search. Okay, by clicking on this little gear here, we get our parts list. And as I said, you can have as many parts as you want in this list because it's on the SQL database. It doesn't affect your performance or speed. So every last one of these part records here, let's open up this one for example. It's going to have our part information. We can use barcoding here if we want, description. This section category is actually under development. It's not used yet. Very few people actually use manufacturer, but this is kind of slick because you can actually run reports by manufacturer. But mostly people use this for tires. Okay, a lot of this stuff is auto-generated in the Add a Part wizard, which we're going to run through together in a moment, and it throws in a lot of this information just by default. Condition is always defaulted to new. You have to select in the wizard if it's used or rebuilt, and if you're ordering online, which for me about 80% of all my part purchases were done with online ordering when I was in the shop, it will know automatically whether or not to mark it as a new or as a rebuilt or remanufactured part. Location is very cool if you guys are stocking parts. It's also neat for the physical inventory worksheets that come out. Product codes. We're not going to go too deep into this today unless you guys have some questions on it, but pretty much product codes just let you group your parts into different categories. And you also can have your parts, including the inventory of those parts, the sale of those parts, and the cost of goods associated with that part sale, sectioned out on your financials separately. And I'll show you really quick. And if I click select, I have a couple in here. I can group my batteries together, and you can see here the asset account, income account, and cost of goods. The numbers are the same as my general inventory. But I can run reports on product code. Same for filters, but like oil filters, air filters, that kind of thing. Again, I can group my reports, maybe even my reorder reports by product code. But you see the financials are going to the same spot. So let's look at tires, for example. Notice it's not going to the 13,000 account, asset account. It's going to 13,100. So I can track my inventory, tire inventory separately than my regular parts. I can track my sales, this income account, on its own sales line on my financials, as well as my cost of goods. So I can segment out what's my gross profit in tires separately from the rest of my inventory. This is probably the most common product code that I see used, guys. And in years past, and I throw myself into that category when I was a MaxxTraxx user in the 90s, we used to section this out. We used to have like 30 different product codes. You know, guys, since we don't stock parts like we used to 20 years ago, I don't know how useful that is. I like the tire product codes because here in Colorado, we stock a lot of tires. We can stock $80,000, $100,000 worth of snow tires in the winter. So it's kind of nice for us to be able to see, first of all, our sales separately and actually what we have in inventory just for tires. Okay, any questions on product codes, guys? Like I said, very few people actually use that feature, but it's kind of cool. We also have the same ability to section out our labor sales, by the way, just a little side note. These other fields, you know, I have a great training video called Add a Part that goes into each and every one of these fields. This one I do want to talk about because it's in the Add a Part Wizard, fluids. You know, if you check for a particular part, like your oil or your antifreeze or your gear oil, fluids, it'll track your fluids separately in a multitude of areas of the program, including the summary and the repair order, the sales tax report, your income and expense. I mean, just a lot of different areas the fluids are tracked separately. I don't actually prefer that for a general repair shop. This is mostly for our quick lube franchises. They have to segment out a lot of their fluids, and they reorder separately, kind of with a different feature. So guys, I would steer clear of that if it were me. Now let's look at the most important, for my opinion, most important link in the Add a Part Wizard, or in the part record, forgive me, is the stock link. This tells us how many of these parts we have on hand. See, it says stock on hand 3. It also shows us here on this screen any adjustments. Every time we buy a part or sell a part, it shows up in this adjustment record. And this is very cool when you want to see if anything got adjusted into inventory or out of inventory. Actually, every time it's actually put on a vendor invoice that you purchased, for example, says we ordered up 4, we actually only received, you know, we actually took 1 off and only received 3. You could see I went from a quantity of 3 because I actually added 1 to an RO, and it shows it. Actually went -1, so actually then only had 2 on hand. Then, of course, I took it off that RO, see the note, deleted part from RO, and I put it back to adjusting 1 back in, so I'm back to 3. So you guys don't have to reference this very often, but if you ever run into a snag about, you know, what's going on with my inventory, it keeps track of every single transaction, every RO it's put on, every restock invoice is put on, every parts order form, kind of slick. But if you, let's say this brush, this is obviously a brush that goes into a starter or something like that. Well, let's say we drop one, or we damage one, or we do a physical inventory and they're missing. We can always adjust our stock quantity to get to what's in real life. Let's say we actually broke one, or we bent it, so it's not safe for putting into a starter. So I can hit subtract quantity 1. This is the cost I paid for it, and I put my initials in. So guys, this is just a cost of doing business. You guys know that as well as I do. If you drop a filter, it is not worth putting a dented filter on a vehicle and risking an engine, right? So what do? You subtract it out of inventory. And stuff breaks all the time, or stuff doesn't get billed out to a customer, and if you're really not comfortable sending them a supplementary bill, which I have no problem with, but let's say something didn't get billed out and you want to take it out of inventory. By subtracting this part, this brush, not only am I correcting my count, I'm actually moving $1.78 from my asset account to a cost of goods. Because even if I don't bill it to the customer, or if I break it, it's still a cost of me doing business. So that's important to keep your financials straight. It also helps you with your income tax, right? So we click OK. And now I've just gone to stock on hand is now a quantity of 2. So that is actually not used a lot, but I want everybody to be real familiar with on how this part adjustment feature works. Hey, Greg, are you, if you're just going to be listening, I have you using speaker and microphone, Greg, but if you want to jump in and ask some questions, and please do, just click the Use Telephone Radio button under the orange arrow and call into the conference call. Looks like Greg just joined us from Pennsylvania, guys. So any questions on this feature? We good on this? Is Jody on the phone with you, Randy?
Yes.
Okay. Does that make sense to you, Jody, from an accounting, from a bookkeeping perspective?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Again, guys, we can view sales, we can view our purchases. This is extremely handy. When we see who we bought it from, we can, do warranty claims. Just an FYI for our MaxxTraxx users on the call, parts purchase details, part purchase history from MaxxTraxx does not convert. Of course, going forward, anything you purchase is going to put a part purchase history in here. But that was one you did not get in your data conversion, so we always recommend you keep a copy of MaxxTraxx handy in case you have to look up a part number for warranty. Okay? We got a question here. I had a question there for Greg. I missed that question. Hang on.
Hey, Sabrina.
Yeah.
Can you track those damaged parts somehow to figure out how many you're damaging over the year?
No, that is actually an excellent question. Let's look and see. So I'm just going to jump over to reports, going to inventory. Let's see, inventory adjustments. So I can list all or selected adjustments to parts quantity. Let's take a look at this. You know, this is for fun. Let's see what I got in here. Let me go back to, let's say, July, since I'm on demo data, see what comes up. Okay, I do have a report here. So teeny, guys, hard to see. But it doesn't say why it was adjusted. It doesn't say, like, damaged part. But this will give you some visibility into, well, first of all, who it was adjusted by. You guys see my initials, SSC. But it also, let's see, what does it tell us here? Part number, part description, date and time it was adjusted, my cost. Actually, it doesn't look like an amount was in there. You guys, again, this is demo data. So it is, let's look at this one down here, parts for Ford, 12354, just for example. It has my initials, date, time, cost was $333. Old quantity 1, new quantity, or 2, new quantity 1. So I just adjusted 1 out. So I see this is our valuation column before the adjustment and then after the adjustment. Let's see if we have a total on this page. So it really doesn't, in my opinion, if I were looking, Greg, at, you know, was it damaged or was it lost? Did it just not get put on the RO? So those are your 3 main reasons, right? Damaged, didn't get billed out, which of course we're trying to put in a lot of features and functionality to prevent that, or it walked out, it grew some legs and walked out the back door. So I don't have any visibility into that, but I can see when it happened and who reported it. So good to know, just to kind of keep in mind. And where it shows up, guys, and it's kind of for you, Jody, and if Amanda's jumped in to listen, under our cost of goods sold, I'm just typing the number 5. It jumps me down to all my cost of goods sold. Now, automatically in the background, when you close an RO, it moves it, as I mentioned, from the asset account, which shows as an asset on your balance sheet, to the cost of goods sold parts account, which it shows up on your income and expense statement, right? So that's why we always tie those 2 financials together. If it is an adjustment, it actually goes 56,000 account. So you can see month over month what your inventory adjustments have been. That's just for fun. Okay, again, demo data, guys, work with me. My ending balance here for this year, or yeah, for this year since January 1, see this filter up here, currently filtered to show transactions between Jan 1, is $12,000. Now that would be a real bummer, actually, because that's a lot of adjustments. But that would be credits to this credit account. Okay, this would be the adjustment out. I'm sorry, debit. Just work with me here. Let me close this. Okay, yes, forgive me. Cost of goods sold is a debit account. So remember, if the debit, the words match, it's making the account go up. So let's look at that again. So here is that $333 we looked at just a minute ago. That parts from Ford 12354. Remember we looked at that? These numbers, where it looks like I'm crediting my adjustment account, occurs whenever my inventory says 0. But I'm like, wait a minute, guys. I am increasing my inventory. So see what the words say? Added to inventory using an inventory adjustment. Now, let's just talk about this real quick. For MaxxTraxx users, it's not going to be a problem. But for new users, what we want you to do is get all of your physical inventory on hand into MaxxTraxx as soon as possible. when you first start using the system. Why? Because as you make those inventory adjustments through the Add a Part wizard, so I'm adding oil, and I'm saying, how much do I have on hand? I don't know, 500 quarts. It's going to put an adjustment here, which is actually making a negative cost of goods. So the way that system setup is done in the very beginning is we're putting all this stuff as a credit to this inventory adjustment account. So theoretically, it would make your account here very negative. But that's okay. Once you get all of your inventory in the first couple days, the first week or two, then we do a general journal entry. Again, we never do general journal entries, guys, unless, number one, we're doing the setup, or number two, we're doing depreciation at the end of the year, or if we're purchasing new equipment, we need to get to your balance sheet, right? That's the only way we get stuff to your balance sheet. So what happens is I do see a lot of shops through the year or through the years saying, oh, shoot, I never inventoried this box of parts I have out in the back. And they start adding them in. So this is going to reduce your cost of goods. Why do we care about that? Well, cost of goods means less profit shows up on my tax return, right? So I pay less. So we want to try to get all these beginning, this beginning physical inventory on hand into MaxxTraxx as soon as possible so we can adjust it out. Then we'll only have these debits, and these are losses. These are things that we break or lose or forget to bill out. And these here on the debit side help us reduce our taxable income, right? So that's a little bit about how this works. A little bit, it's a little bit complicated, guys. Unless you really are good at the accounting stuff, it may not make sense right now. But if you want to track this in 2-3 months after you've been using the system, let's look at it together, okay? I'm more than happy to do that with you guys. I want to make sure your financials are accurate. So let's go back to the Add a Part wizard. Now, luckily for you guys on the call that are MaxxTraxx users, we've talked about this. Your parts inventory, your parts list, including quantities, cost, selling price, everything, convert over. But let's say in Greg's situation, Greg's going to just start using MaxxTraxx January 1. So between now and January 1, Greg's going to go through the painstaking process of adding all of his inventory on hand through the Add a Part wizard. And of course, going forward, guys, you're going to be adding parts to your Add a Part wizard if you're not using online ordering all day, every day, because I'm sure you're buying parts that you don't have on your parts list. That's just part of our business. So we go through the part search and click Add Part. Let's start the wizard. Now notice the red stars, guys. You have to have these. You don't have to have anything else but the stuff with the red star. So let's just say for fun, just for fun, oil filter. Okay, so part number, part description, and just work with me, guys. I'm just doing some fake stuff. Again, I do not use this is a fluid unless you have a specific reason, like you're a franchise and you need it. Obviously, German store.
Sabrina, can you disable the fluid thing so we can't choose it?
That I've never had anybody ask me that, but that's not a bad idea. I will put it.
Sure enough, somebody's gonna.
Yeah. And it's not a huge deal, but it kind of just messes up your reports. I'm just not a fan of the feature myself. Okay, I'm going to see if we can put that feature in. Okay. This is if you guys have barcoding. Kind of a cool feature, but mostly just for RV shops because they usually stock a bunch of stuff, like in a sales room. And we'll just click Next. Location, this is really just for your stocked parts. I use location a lot for tires because we used to say which rack we put our tires on. We stocked a ton of winter, snow tires. But if it's not a stock part, you guys just skip it. Condition, it defaults to new, or you would select used or rebuilt. And this is important because in most states, legally we have to have new, used, or rebuilt printing on our ROs to be in compliance. Again, the stuff with the red dots, guys, if you do online ordering, MaxxTraxx knows to put in the part number in the description automatically from the online part. You don't have to do anything, and it will default to new or rebuilt because it knows from online ordering if it's a rebuild or reman part. Product code will always default to general inventory. Side note here, guys. If you do online ordering, it will always default the product code to general inventory. We don't have a way to tell it. You know, if it's a filter, give it a product code of oil filters. So with that being said, and with the popularity of online ordering, I probably would just let all of my parts default to general inventory. Part and tire size, this is a search field. So if you guys want to search your parts list, we usually just put tire size in here, like without the P or the LT. I just may put like 235/70 R16 or whatever. And also for nuts and bolts. This is kind of cool to put the metric size or whatever size for your nuts and bolts in here. Again, because this is a search field. Now another side note for MaxxTraxx users. In MaxxTraxx, when we first put a part in the system, we either said it was a stock or non-stocked part. We actually don't have that functionality in MaxxTraxx. The only thing that makes a part a stocking part is if you put in a best quantity and or minimum quantity. So everything that converts over comes over as pretty much a non-stocked part unless in MaxxTraxx you have quantities. If you have quantities, it'll automatically fill it in for you. And what happens when you have stocking of information? These part numbers show up on reorder reports. It's really only different, okay? It's a totally different programming language. Now, best quantity will remind you if you have one on hand and your best quantity says 6, the reorder report will just say, please order 5 of this part number. Minimum quantity, let's just put that in for this oil filter for fun. Minimum quantity means if I put in a quantity of 2, it's not going to order or put in my reorder report this part number until I get to 1. It's saying minimum is good enough. So it's the number that falls under that triggers the reorder report. So if I get down to 2, I need to order some more. Put in the number 3, guys. So when I get down to 2, it actually will be on my reorder report. So that's just a little tricky thing here. Click next. Pricing. Now, guys, you know I'm also a big part price matrix believer, okay? Now, I do understand that service writing is an art, and I know that you guys may have to change your pricing on an actual RO all the time. The part price matrix get us in the ballpark. Not only do they get us in the ballpark for when we add a part to an RO, but we can have online parts that we order have a matrix applied to it. Okay? We also have our profit monitors. Our profit monitors going red or green are driven off the part price matrices. So you guys can see they're very integral in the program. So let's say for my example, my oil filter cost me $3. Actually, let's make it $3.50. And list price, I don't know for this filter, I don't know, it could be $7.95. Now I have this set to use my price matrix, and it goes to my default. Well, I'm obviously not going to sell a $3 for me, a $3.50 filter for $10. That's what my matrix would sell it for. That's what my default matrix is set to. I actually have one particularly for oil filters. And check out my matrix. It's very different from most of my other matrix. It's going to say any part that costs me between, I just know this by heart, between $3 and $5, I'm going to add $2.50 to the cost of that part, regardless of, it's just a dollar amount added up. So if I made, let's say if I made it $4, check this out. Oh, that might be my threshold. Let's look at my matrix here really quick, guys. Actually, I don't want to get out of the add a part wizard. We'll go back in just a moment. But let me change this to dealer. My dealer matrix is set to mark up dealer parts 50%. So it's going to take my cost times whatever my matrix is, and that sets the selling price. Now, for some people, for oil, here's a good example. For oil, you might want to say, I'm just going to charge list. Whatever they say is list, I'm going to do. So I would take off my part price matrix and just say, make my selling price $7.95. and I'm not going to have a second level. I could have, obviously, 6 different price levels. So what I'm saying here is that this part, no matter what the cost, I'm always going to sell for $7.95. Let's say this part now costs me $5.50. Check it out. It doesn't change my selling price. But let's say, you know what, I want to always sell this part for a 50% profit margin. So if my cost goes up, I'm going to charge it more to my customer. We need to actually manually put that in here, guys. Let's say we put 50%. Notice where the little red arrow goes. So that if my price changes, let's now make it $5. I'm going to use my profit margin and sell it for 10 bucks. This is a pretty important feature to really thoroughly understand. And again, we have a really good training video that goes into this very screen in depth. So guys, just want to make sure you're real familiar that you can set up multiple price matrices here. Go back to my original oil filter. Part price matrices, and you can have one that is, for example, jobber pricing. I have a separate one for CarQuest because I negotiated really good pricing with CarQuest. Dealer is obviously, you know, not as aggressive as the other ones. So I do recommend you guys use this feature. Any questions on this part price matrix? I know it's pretty complex. Okay, guys. Let's go ahead and hit advanced. Now, for new system users, this is like Greg's situation. If we click on the advanced button, we can add in here current stock on hand. So if we go through this add a part wizard over and over and over again for all of our parts on hand right before we start using MaxxTraxx, we have an option here to say, you know what, I actually have 6 of these filters on hand. So you can put that here, or in Greg's case, you know what we're doing? We're actually taking the entire month of December and adding all of our parts to our parts list, but not putting in a quantity yet. Not going to do it yet. We're just going to leave it blank. Another thing, guys, we can tie a hazardous materials fee to this part record. So anytime I ever select this oil filter, it would always add $1 in hazardous materials fees to that customer's RO automatically. I don't have to remember to do it. Actually, we can do the same thing for like a tire disposal fee, tire tax. So if you actually stock this part and you want to put the add-on charge in under this advanced button, MaxxTraxx will be smart enough to add it to every RO that you ever sell this part on. Can you always override it? Absolutely. Absolutely. We can always take it off if we need to. But in my case, I'm not going to put current stock on hand. I'm going to show you why here in a minute. And I'm going to click the next button, and it created my part record. Okay? Quantity 0. Now, in Greg's case, what we're going to do is we're going to put every last part that he has on hand on this parts list. And then we're going to go and run a physical inventory worksheet right before the end of December. And he's going to have this great printout of every part that he has in stock with a field to enter in the quantity. It's going to say current on hand 0. And then he's going to print those worksheets out, give it to his guys, go through the shop, put in all the beginning inventory, and then he's going to enter those numbers right before the first of the year. And that's how we're going to, this new quantity field thing, we're going to enter those in. Because he's going to be buying and selling parts between now and December 31st, so we're just going to put in MaxxTraxx everything at 0 until we do that physical inventory. Does that make sense, guys? Why we would do that? Okay, guys, so we talked a little bit today about the part record, the add a part wizard. Now let's talk about how we actually get these parts into MaxxTraxx. Now the fact of the matter is, guys, like I said, 80%, maybe 90% of everything you put on vehicles are ordered just in time. We just don't have to stock parts like we used to, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So whenever a part comes into the shop, remember I always really say for our accounting users, keep this in mind. Anything you put on that vehicle, be it a part, a supply charge, or a sublet, anything that's going to be put on that vehicle needs to be in MaxxTraxx before you sell it. Why? Because our golden rule is we need to duplicate in MaxxTraxx what's happening in real life. And in real life, we're actually ordering up parts, receiving them, and then putting on the customer's car, and then we're selling the part, right? So the number one way that I do this in MaxxTraxx, like I said, I am a huge online ordering person. And I'll be honest, I actually will lean toward a supplier with online ordering than one that doesn't, just because it makes my life easier. Now, of course, about 20% of our parts still come from the dealer. And at this point in time, the vast majority of dealers don't have any kind of online parts ordering. So we're going to handle that as a separate scenario. But for example, see this oil filter that I have here, this 1072? I am prompted when I exit this RO to order it. Now, something I want to show you on this little screen, it doesn't say a vendor. You see this vendor box, this column is 0? Probably because I added this part. Whoops, I added this part to this parts list from the parts list. I actually went add part, went from parts list and said 1072 and added it from there. But online ordering does not always work smoothly, guys, if you do it that way. So what you do is every single time you order up a part online, because you know you don't have it in stock, let's just delete this. Let's go to, see if I have Napa set up for fun. And I'm going to save a keyword, oil filter. There we go. And again, like I said, most of all my, let's do the gold one. I don't think I have that in stock. And I click Add Parts to RO. Oh, it looks like I had bought this before, and it even tells me this. This is my existing part record and my new part record. The only difference is that my existing part record said my cost was $6.99, and look at my cost is lower. But look at list. List was $13.58. Now list is higher. So I'm going to say, yeah, go ahead and update the part record. So what happened, except for it looks like I had some of these in stock. So I didn't get a red circle with a slash on it. See that, guys? Let's try the other oil filter through Napa. Or let me see if I grab one from O'Reilly's instead. See if I got O'Reilly set up. May or may not. It looks like I do. I'm trying to get a different part number, guys. So here's my filters. Engine filters. Let's see, oil filters. You guys see these, all these interfaces are teeny tiny bit different. See, I don't think I have this FRAM number. Let's try that guy. I'm clicking in the order column, add to quote, transfer quote. There it is. Okay, now I have a red circle and slash because I haven't actually purchased this part before. So I don't have a part record. I've never bought it before. So now when I go to exit this RO, it's saying, hey, Sabrina, you ordered, see this vendor, O'Reilly. You haven't got that in stock, so you need to order it. So now I click on the order button, click next, select O'Reilly, and this is my parts order form. And see my send order button is lit up because I actually, in real life, could send this order through, but it's somebody else's O'Reilly account. I'm not going to do it. So you can see, guys, I actually have to select the part that I'm going to put on this RO from the Parts Warehouse's online ordering website, because it does two things. It gets accurate cost, finds out if it's in inventory, but the other side of that coin is it turns this feature on. It knows that this part, because it's getting a whole bunch of online parts ordering part information in the background from O'Reilly's, and it's actually starting an order on O'Reilly's website, not just in MaxxTraxx, on O'Reilly's website. So if I actually hit the send order button for real, it would say over here where it says open in the upper right corner, guys, it would say submitted, and I'll get this little window that came up that says your order has been sent successfully. Does that make sense, guys? Okay, so let's say I did hit send order, it said it went through. I'm just going to save this. Because I'm just going to save this open parts order form, it says PO, but it actually stands for parts order form, until they walk in the door with my filter and my receipt. Okay, so maybe an hour later, whatever, they come back. huge mistake that, guys, I made in the beginning. I thought, well, shoot, I just made a parts order form. Shouldn't it be sitting in here waiting for me to convert? And I'll be honest, for the first couple of months, actually a couple of weeks, I should say, I'm like, wow, it's not here. And I would start over entering in this parts order form from O'Reilly's. Guys, it's under the order parts icon. So I always say that because I've done that, and I've actually had a lot of folks say the same thing happens to them. So I click under order parts, and here it is, O'Reilly. If I hit this big green button that says convert selected parts order, PO, into a received vendor invoice, because that's what we're doing. We're receiving this invoice from O'Reilly's for that purchase. So let's look over back at this icon, guys. Here it says restock parts. It's kind of a misnomer, kind of not named correctly, because we're really not stocking this part, number one. And I know a lot of people that are new to stock systems, it throws them. We actually call it restock parts because that's what we called it in MaxxTraxx for about 20 years, okay? But really, this icon should actually say receive vendor invoice, because that's what we're doing. We're entering a receive vendor invoice. So when I click the check box or the check mark, it brings up this screen. Okay, so this is just checking my math. It's saying, hey, Sabrina, enter the amount of that paper vendor invoice. Why? Because we want to make sure our data entry is correct. Okay, and you're, as bookkeeping people, Jody, you'll be very happy that people do this. Okay, so there it is. There's the part. There's the cost. It's already assigned to this parts order form number. See that? Now you can enter in the invoice number right here, but I just click OK Save because it will prompt me to do it. So a couple of things. If you save this as an open vendor invoice, it's not posting anywhere. It's not giving you a quantity of one filter. It's not posting to your accounts payable. It's just waiting. Maybe you got a phone call, or maybe you needed to add something more to it and you had to get out of this screen. So saving it, you pretty much don't want to do that unless there's a problem. We want to select this one. And what are we doing when we hit this selection here? We are posting a couple of things. We're posting a $9 bill to my O'Reilly account. We are posting $9 worth of inventory to our asset account on our general ledger, our financials. And we are updating our inventory quantity from, actually in this case, a -1 to a 0. We're actually putting 1 on our parts list, quantity of 1, so we have 1 to sell on that job. Does that make sense, guys? Okay, it's a really, really important concept. So let's go ahead and do that. We're posting update inventory. See, it prompts me to put in an invoice number. So let's just put in a fake number. So this actually is probably one of the most, well, firstly, one of the most important data entries that you do. It's about 1/3 of all the data entry you ever do in a MaxxTraxx. And there are 4 different ways to accomplish what we just did. So it can be a little bit confusing. Okay, guys? We're going to run through each one of those scenarios because you'll hit all 4 of them. So now when I go back into that RO, red circle is gone. And we know if I were to double click on this, it now says stock on hand is 0 instead of -1. And look at my price is in here, my cost is in here. Okay, so we have, like I said, 4 different ways of getting parts into MaxxTraxx that you buy. Number 1, online ordering. So please take advantage of that, guys, because you can see, check this out. If I right-click on this and I click View Part Master Record, do you see it created a part record for me in the background? I didn't have to do a darn thing. Put in the part number, description, it knew it was new, general inventory, stock was all taken care of. Look at my purchases in here. Look at that. My selling price is done, my cost. I mean, it is, slick. Very, very slick. So, number 1, online parts ordering. Go to the website, select the parts, add it to the RO, create the part record in the background, and prompts you. Remember, hey, Sabrina, you don't have one of these in stock. And that's how you access online ordering for everybody. NAPA, WorldPac, CarQuest, Factory Motor Parts for your Delco people, O'Reilly's, AutoZone. Now, the other way to do it is you call them on the phone. Now, if you can say, you know what, I know that I'm going to put, let's just for fun, that the 10, let's see, that, what was that part number? Let's just throw this hose on. Let's say, for example, I'm not going to online ordering, but I'm going to put a hose number 1003 on this part ticket. Now, I still can pick up the phone right now and say, hey, Napa, send me one of these hoses. I still can do that. Now, of course, I have this in stock. It's not giving me a prompt to order this. In fact, let's grab one that does give us a prompt. Grab a part we know says 0. Let's just, for fun. Oh, here's the one. Here's a good one. Here's that oil filter we're playing with. Okay, none on hand, so it's going to go negative. So I could actually pick up the phone right now and say, hey, Napa, send me this Napa Gold oil filter, and hang up. I still can click OK, save, use this feature, order it, and I can choose. See, no vendor selected, but I can say, hey, I know, because I just picked up the phone, I know this is coming from Napa. So let's go to Napa. Now, even though I'm not going to send this button, and maybe for one of my vendors, I don't even have a send button. That's okay. Still use this feature because it reduces your data entry. I'm just going to save it and wait for Napa to show up. So again, Napa shows up, you know, half an hour later, hands me my oil filter. Thank you very much. I just fly through here, double check my math, enter the invoice number, and I'm done. Again, I'm tracking my parts purchases. I've just done my accounts payable. I'm tracking my bookkeeping. Okay, so we've done a lot of things, and again, that red circle is gone. So either we do it online through online ordering and submit it online, or we create a parts order form and still call in the part and then get it coming. So another way we do this is if we call the dealer. Okay, let's say we're getting a, I don't know, a window bracket or something. If we call the dealer, now chances are you're not going to have that dealer read you the part number over the phone. You know, 1GZ23, whatever, you know, this like long part number. So what do you do when that happens? Which, you know, from us, we use a fair amount of dealer parts, 20% of the time. I kind of skip the whole parts order form. I just wait for them to show up, and when they show up, I go into restock parts. So I am going to do it what we call the old-fashioned way. This is the way our MaxxTraxx users have been doing it for 24 years. Actually 25 years coming in 2012. We just go to input that received vendor invoice from the dealer. Let's just see. So we select the vendor, this is the dealer. We put in however much the part costs, and we add a line item. Now, 9 times out of 10 or 95 times out of 100, you're going to have to use the Add a Part Wizard and put that part number in. Okay, so let's say, I don't know, 1GH4E, whatever, part number. And let's say it's a, I don't know, window bracket. Okay, next, it defaults to new general inventory. I just put it in, cost me 54 bucks. I'm going to sell it for a list of, I don't know, 68.50. And I'm not going to use my matrix, obviously. I'm just going to use, I'm going to sell it for list. Okay, and then hit next. And no cores. If we had cores, by the way, guys, you would just check this box and put in your cores amount. Little side note, I think I talked about this last week, just as a side note. This quantity used core in stock, by the way, in this wizard, means how many used, dirty, old, greasy cores do you have in stock. This doesn't mean how, you know, most people put quantity 1, because why? They see a field and they're like, I got to put something in that field. They put quantity 1, and then they're like, well, why does it say I have this extra used core in stock? Just a little side note there, guys. So I'm going to click Finish. I'm adding first this dealer part to my list, and then I select it, and it cost me 54 bucks. And here, very important, this is, remember we were talking about sometimes you need to adjust out parts out of inventory. Why? Because you forgot to put them on the bill. This is a great feature for that. Reserve it. I bought this special $54 window bracket, reserve it for the job. So I can click reserve item for repair order and click select for that Saturn, select it, and click OK. Any questions on that one little move that I just did there, guys? Do you see how that works?
When you reserved it, did you put it on the RO when you did that?
Kind of. Kind of. And I'll show you what. Yes, I did. I put it on the RO, not in the body of the RO, Randy, and I'll explain to you. This was confusing to me in the beginning. I'm like, just throw it on the RO for me. Why do you make me go through another step? Let me show you. Great question. Let me show you why. We're going to post to accounts payable and update my inventory. Put in my fake number. Ooh, that's a heck of a number. I get this notice. It says, hey, Sabrina, the following parts were not found on the RO. Please remember to go to each RO and add these parts if needed. Now, I'll be honest, for the first week that I figured out this feature, I printed this list, but man, oh man, I was killing trees left and right. So I actually don't print this list. I close this because, look, when I go to that RO, and I have this in my setup, it reminds me. It says, hey, Sabrina, wait a minute, this item, has been put on this, it's for this job. Make sure you go and put it on there. I'll be okay. If for some reason the customer decides that they're not going to buy this window bracket, which I'd be pretty unhappy about if I just bought a special part from the dealer, I could remove it from the list so it doesn't warn me. But most of the time, of course, I'm going to bill it. So I'm just going to click close. Now check it out. You see, Randy, that window bracket is actually not in the body of the RO. It's over here, parts on order. It lets you know that you have, in fact, ordered this part for it. But the reason why, I'm like, guys, why isn't this on here? They're like, which labor do we put it under, Sabrina? I'm like, okay, good point, guys. That was part of their workflow. So what would we do? We would probably add, a reason for service. I don't know, it's just body. Maybe let's add one really quick. Let's say body repair. And let's see, let's put it under body exterior. I just created a reason for service on the fly. I'm going to select it. And then I would add a labor. And if I don't have one in here, I just click add labor service. Let's call it flat rate. I'm just going to go, let's say window repair. Okay. I'm just going to leave it window repair. I'm not going to put any more details in there. And I may or may not even put an amount in here. I'll leave it 0. It's okay, because maybe a window repair is different every single time. So let me select it. I'm going to put in my labor rate, $95. And you know what? It took me, I don't know, an hour to put in the bracket. So you guys see I can just do that on the fly. And then when I can now add parts. Check this out, guys. Add parts. Instead of getting a part from my list or doing online ordering, check this out. At the bottom, I have from parts sublet on order. So you kind of get in your mind, if I ever get a dealer part, go select it from part sublet on order. Here it is. Select it and click OK. Okay? So that's why they don't throw it in the body, Randy. Excellent question. Thank you for asking that. The reason why they didn't throw it in the body of the RO right away is it didn't know which labor to put it under with our new structure. Would have worked with our old DOS program because it didn't care. But with this new structure, it does care. Okay, so we talked about we get parts, online ordering, and we obviously create a parts order form upon exiting our RO and hit send order to electronically order. Number 1. Number 2, we call up the part, call up and order it on the phone, but we still create a parts order form because we know what the part number is. It's on our parts list. So we do that to reduce our data entry. 3, we get a part that we don't know the part number of until it actually shows up. We don't worry about the parts order form. Just when the part shows up, we go right to restock parts. And this is what I call the old-fashioned way of, just like you guys do in MaxxTraxx, every single day, dozens of times a day, 222, select your vendor, and hit enter your part. And then you have to go back into the RO, select the part number. Okay, so we've got a little bit of less data entry. We don't have to actually type in this window bracket part number again because it's under parts on order. So that helps a little bit to reduce our data entry. Now the third thing, let's just for fun, I'm going to delete some of this stuff and make it a recommendation just to clean this up a little bit because I've got a bunch of junk in here. Okay, so as you had mentioned, you had said before, Randy, what do we do if we want to use a part placeholder? Now, again, you guys know I'm a big part kit person, and in my kits, I have part placeholders. Let's do this one, for example, because this has a placeholder. I'm going to select it. Okay, so actually, let me grab another one. Let me grab another one that has, see what this, I'm going to hit edit to see what it looks like first. Perfect, perfect. That's got a part placeholder. So I'm going to select it. Yes. Okay, so actually I want to put on a reason for service though. I want to put oil change so it's got its own line. And I'm going to drag my parts and labor down to this reason for service. That looks better. That's let me just delete. Okay, so here's my reason for service, my labor for my oil, or, I'm sorry, where is it? Oh, I dragged it to the wrong one, guys. Let me bring this up here. Here's my oil change. Sorry about that. Wasn't looking close enough. So you can see I have my reason for service as an oil change. Let's clap this down. Keep it clean. Got my labor. You can see that here in the item number for the oil, I actually have a part number. But you see here, guys, in the item number column, I don't have a part number. Why? Because it's a placeholder. So this is the fourth way to add, to get parts into MaxxTraxx that you buy. Now, either I'm going to right-click, either I can replace this placeholder with a part from my part list. And again, either it could be one I have in stock or one that I don't have in stock that's already on my list. Or I could actually replace this placeholder with a part for one of these online ordering guides. Let's see if I have one for, let's see if I'm set up. Let's try Merle's just for fun because I'm getting a different part number each time. Let's see if this is set up. So this will do the exact same thing. It will take me out to online ordering now to Parts Plus. See that? So same thing. I go through the same motions, but I do it by replacing a part placeholder. Let's grab something in here. Let's say oil filter, display parts and labor. This is an example, by the way, parts and labor. I can get Mitchell labor times out of here, guys. I just want to show you a little side thing. Check it out. This part supplier provides the Mitchell labor time. So some do, some don't. Just want to give you a little side note there. So let's see. I don't know if I've ever used this one before. Let's try this part number. I might already have it on my list. I'm going to click Order Review. Again, remember, every interface is a little different, guys. Then I'll click Add Items to RO. And here I get this warning. I love this. It's going to say, which price do you want to use? My placeholder price of $5 or the actual inventory parts price? Actually, I have a third option. I could put on a custom price if I wanted. But let's just for fun say, I'll just use the inventory price. $5 is way too cheap. What was I thinking when I wrote this kit, right? So I'll add this on here and click OK. Now, obviously, I do have some of these in stock. No, I don't. Why isn't it prompting me? It should prompt me to order. Oh, I did. I had one in stock. So let's say I put 2. Of course, I'd never do that with a filter. But that would prompt me to have my red circle and slash. And it would prompt me to go ahead and order this part. See? And say, hey, order up this part. So that's the other way. I'm going to say exit without ordering, just for this example. So you guys, you can see we've got a couple different ways to get these parts into the system. We can either replace a part placeholder and get it from our list, which we may or may not have in stock, which is going to do what? Prompt us to create a parts order form. Or we're going to say, you know what, let me just go out to one of these websites and replace this part placeholder with the filter, because I have no idea what this vehicle takes as a filter number, so I'm just going to go online and do it. Or again, you could pick up the phone, and maybe you're getting it from the dealer. What would you do that time? We would leave a placeholder. We would leave a placeholder, and we would replace that placeholder. Let's do that for an example again. Oops, wrong one. Add part, placeholder, salt, oil, filter, and let's just say $5. Okay, so let's delete this guy. So if I want to replace a placeholder, I could replace a placeholder with a part from order, right? Because when that, let's say a dealer part showed up, and I didn't have it on my list before, I would go through restock parts, go through the old-fashioned way, or what I call the long way to get parts in the system. And then I would just have that and say, hey, Sabrina, you need to put this part number on the RO, and you're like, great, thank you so much. So I would go to that part sublet on order, select it, and replace it, and say, do I want to use my placeholder price or the actual price? So those are 4 ways of getting parts into MaxxTraxx, because remember, we have to have them in MaxxTraxx before we sell them. One last thing I want to show you guys, you see this little dollar sign? This is a new feature. I'm still actually, honestly, still figuring out the best way to use this feature. What this means when it has a red dollar sign is I originally put this belt on this RO based on one cost, but if I double click on it, obviously what happens, my cost is different. My cost was different than I originally quoted the customer. So it's telling me that, hey, Sabrina, this cost is different than your original quote. Do you want to sell it for your original quoted price, or do you want to sell this belt based on the new cost? Because maybe it went up $2 or $3. Like I said, guys, I'm still working on how best to apply that feature. It was fairly new since I've been working with Scott systems. I never use this as a user. So I'll be working on that and putting out a training video on that down the road. But that's what that red dollar sign means. Okay, guys, so we covered a lot in today's webinar. So I want to remind you, we have a training video for the adding a part. If you want to go and look at some of the other features that you can use in the part record. Number 1. Number 2, part price matrices. Love the feature. Now, you guys know that even if there's a matrix applied, see this matrix, default matrix, I can always uncheck it and say, you know, I need to sell this belt for $38.95 to be competitive. Okay, you guys always can do that. Let's look at another thing. If I had a part on here, let's just say this belt was the oil filter, I can add, at this point, a hazardous materials fee or a tire disposal fee. I can do this edit, and you know, this can either be added automatically because I've stored it in the part record, or if I don't want to go through and worry about storing it in my part record, I can add it after the fact at any time, or take it off if I have a customer that complains. I can discount the part, and if you discount here versus apply a warranty discount and discount it here, this shows up on 2 different spots in your financials. So guys, you can tell the difference between what we call goodwill discounting, which is really just a marketing ploy. Let's call it spade a spade, but we want the customer to feel like they're getting something, versus you're having to discount something out because there was a warranty. So we talk a little bit, I think I have a video that talks about how to manage warranties. That's another pretty complex thing. We just don't have enough time in a webinar in the self-paced training curriculum in order to address warranties. That's its own issue. So if you have questions on that, join me for an open forum webinar. So we talked a little bit about the part records, part price matrix, and the 4 different ways of getting your part into MaxxTraxx. And we do have videos for all 3 of those areas. So please do refer back to those guys if you want a refresher. Any questions? And we also have a training video on placeholders. If you guys want to look at that too. So any questions, guys? Are we good to go for the day?
Where do you set up the matrix?
Excellent question. Thanks, Randy. Under Parts Manager, Parts Price Matrix. And you just, here are my existing ones. I can add one, or I could edit an existing one, but you just click Add, and you start entering in different levels. And you can have up to 6 different price levels. Remember, Parts pricing is set at the customer level. Labor rate is set at the vehicle level. Okay, so keep that in mind. And you can have so many different levels. I mean, you obviously can't mark up a part that costs $500 as much as you can mark up a part that costs $10. So that's why you can have different levels. And please do check out that parts price matrix video, because it gives you a couple of ideas, different scenarios, and shows you exactly how to do that. So great question, Randy.
One last question. Can you edit the program's vehicle problems and reasons or customer requests?
Absolutely, and we want you to. I'm not a fan, I'll be honest. You know, they're okay, but they certainly would never fit my business. So either I can do it from right within the RO. Here, I can just click on vehicle problem or service, and these, remember, you'll see these 3 buttons on the left in the part record, in the labor record, in our reason for service, in our customer records, in our employee records. These are what we call master record buttons. This changes the master list. Now, every time you select one, of course, you're going to be adding all sorts of notes. Because if someone says, my AC is not cold, you're going to ask them, you know, it's blowing from front vents, not rear vents. I mean, you could see that reason for service, which is going to be one or the other, a request or a problem, is just something to get you started, and then you start playing 20 questions with your customer. And this is where you as a service writer capture all that. Maybe customer saw leaking from front right side of engine compartment. I don't know, just stuff you guys would collect. But the point is that the reason why we have this list of reasons is just to get you started. You know, the alarm's not working properly, and then start asking more questions. But yeah, there's a ton of things that, you know, I would be really surprised if somebody came in and knew that their bearing was a problem on the right rear axle. You know, like, for example, I edited this one. Bearing is making a front wheel noise, but very few of our customers are going to be able to say specifically, I diagnosed that. So a lot of these, you can either just delete them and start a fresh one, or you can take one and edit it. You know, I just don't like the way this works. But yeah, this is a process, you know, it's a working process. I would say probably good 3 to 6 months, Randy, before you get this all cleaned up to the way you want it. I mean, think about how long it took you to customize your labor services in MaxxTraxx. You know, it needs to fit your shop, your workflow, your style. And you guys know me, I'm pretty wordy. I like to put in my descriptions of why the vehicle's there, as well as in my labors, exactly what we do. You know, lots of detail, lots of what actually happens. Value add for the customer. So yeah, definitely edit those, Randy. So like I said, either from within the RO, or for example, like Greg is still just getting his system set up and ready to go for January 1, go up to Manager. And you can clean up that list from here. And same with, let's close this down, same with your labors. Go in and clean up your list. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff that I wouldn't do in here. Let's, you know, delete that. I wouldn't leave. Just a side note, when you guys delete these labor services, they're gone forever. You guys know how if you delete a part, it's never gone forever. It's just inactivated. But if you delete a labor, gone forever. Good question. Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get wrapped up. I will put this on our website so you can view it under archive webinars if you have any questions, but especially regarding the parts. I have a lot of people after the fact refer to our training videos because you can stop them, you can pause them, you can rewind them a bit, and a lot of people will look at a video and then minimize the video for a second and then jump into MaxxTraxx and their demo or their practice version and try it out, and then open up the video and keep going so you can kind of work in tandem with the videos and your practice version. Wednesday is daily sales and cash store report. I strongly recommend you guys come to that one, even if you're not going to be using the full accounting day one, which most of the folks on the call are. We want you to still run a daily sales and cash flow report, and it is different than the daily book. And I'll explain to you all my faux pas that I made when I was a user switching from MotorTraxx to MaxxTraxx because I didn't understand that. So please join us for Wednesday, and we'll talk to you in a couple days. You guys have a great day.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Talk to you then. Bye.